Are you new to flight sims? Everyone was at some point. Here are the top 5 mistakes that I noticed when flying or training others to fly. Remember, this is a hobby and we all do this for fun, so make it a little easier for yourself and others. Now let's get started with those mistakes. I see this a lot and I even do it myself, always comparing to another simulator. It is easy to think that everything transfers from simulator to simulator. Some aspects transfer like aviation fundamentals, decision making, tactics to an extent. However, flight characteristics and the way the simulator depicts reality will be very different. Additionally, the user interface will differ greatly, but that's a given. If you are used to flying the F-16, then a majority of systems will transfer, but of course not everything. Having someone refer to other simulators is like having someone say, at my last job or at my last school, they used to do this and that. It's really annoying, so you should stop it. Also, not everyone plays for the same reason. Training and learning. So training will not be spoon-fed to you, and if you think it will, then you're not going to go very far. In BMS specifically, there isn't any in-game point-and-talk tutorials that you could take. BMS is more of a manual and self-seeking when it comes to learning. If you sit back and wait for someone to help you, then this long journey might not be fun for you. Majority of the learning is up to you to seek and take it in. There's plenty of reading material to read and videos to watch, so there's no shortage of tutorials on the internet. There are even some articles on the forums and Discord that you can all learn from. So the bottom line is that there will be more than one spot where you can find the information. Not everything will be all in one place. It will take a little bit more digging than just finding a specific guide for one specific subject. BMS has manuals, not guides, so it takes a little bit more work. If you think you'll get good overnight, then you're not going to have a great time. This might not even take a month. It might not even take a year. It all depends on how much attention you're putting toward it and how much time you're flying in the air with other people. Trying to cram years of training in anything less than a year is very challenging. So multiplayer is a very new world. It's different. Aspects are different. You're going with humans, so it can be embarrassing and overwhelming at some times. But if you do fly with someone who is more serious than the average player or has more experience than you, or if the experience levels between both of you are vastly different, it may be a culture shock and it will be very overwhelming at first. Playing in multiplayer is the fastest way to understand what you don't know about simulators and your aircraft. There are virtual squadrons out there who create their own standards and rules that usually corresponds to other simulators and can be used throughout all aviation simulators, but there will be some aspects that will be different, like connecting to a server, performing the correct steps to make sure everything is working properly, troubleshooting issues, and not being able to respawn when you get shot down. In BMS, it is a one-life event for just about every multiplayer mission. It is very hard to frag another flight while everybody's up in the air. So, this is why BMS players take it a little bit more seriously when you're up in the air, because if you die, you're done. And friendly fire has a little bit more meaning to it when you only have one life. So asking questions and making mistakes. I'm going to put these two together because they're very relevant. It's okay to ask questions, but there's a time and place for them. In the middle of an engagement is not one of those places to ask. Feel free to ask after your lead has finished the briefing. Try not to ask anything during the briefing because they might go over it literally one sentence after you asked, and allow them time to cover everything in their brief. Asking a question in the middle of battle while being engaged by SU-27s or SA-19s might not be the best time to do it, and your question probably won't be addressed. When in doubt, follow your lead, and you might be able to make it out alive. If you're unable to do something, ask later when you're not in the middle of engagements. Before the mission, it'll be a good idea for you to practice whatever your mission is. Doing something for the first time in a multiplayer mission is probably not a good idea. It doesn't usually end well. Mistakes is something that everyone makes, but not everyone owns up to them. And that is the difference you have to make during the debrief. If your lead notes that you're making mistakes, they are more than likely going to tell you how to do better. Own up to it and do not argue. Feedback is always good. Constructive criticism is necessary. And always try to get better and own up to your mistakes. Link 16 is not implemented in BMS. We use IDM. It came before Link 16, so it doesn't have the fidelity as Link 16, and it doesn't have everything on the screen all at once. It's more of a timing thing. So don't get me wrong, Link 16 is a great tool to have, but if you learned on it and not knowing how to use IDM or not having Link 16 at all, it could be a crutch that you use if you don't have it anymore. And it takes a lot of effort and time to get used to not having it and be able to function without Link 16. In the constraints of this video, all I could say is to be really familiar with Bullseye and develop that mental picture in your head so you can quickly create that mental picture map of the airspace. Use the 2D map to your advantage before you get into 3D. This will aid you a lot when trying to create that mental picture when you're in the cockpit. Learning and using Link 16 all of the time is like using a calculator to initially learn math in school. Wrapping it up here, so these are the mistakes that I see in BMS, and sometimes catch myself doing a couple of these. If I missed anything, and I know I did, please leave a comment and I'll pin it up to the top. The only way to avoid making mistakes is to know about them. If you want a cool shirt, check out my merch store. I do have a few new items there, so check it out. Thanks for watching. Subscribe and click the bell if you want to be notified of new videos, and I'll see you in the next one.